I still remember the exact moment it happened, not just the words, but the feel of them. The kind of moment that doesn't just sting, but lingers like a splinter you can't dig out. I just walked through the front door after a 14-hour double shift at the plant, boots caked in dry cement, sweat-soaked shirt clinging to my back, spine aching from lifting more than a man in his 50s has any business lifting, and all I needed, was to sit at the table, eat something warm, maybe hear a kind word or two from the people I'd been busting my ass for every damn day of the past 2 decades. Instead, as I leaned down to untie my boots, my 17-year-old daughter, the same little girl I taught to ride a bike, the one I used to cradle during thunderstorms, looked me square in the eyes with that smug, screen-lit glare that teenagers have mastered, and said, "God, you are such a pathetic loser." For a second, I thought I'd misheard her. Maybe she was quoting a TikTok video or joking in some weird way I didn't understand, but then I looked at her face, saw the disgust in her eyes, the way her lip curled like I was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe, and that's when it hit me. She meant every single word. But the real blow wasn't hers. It came from the woman sitting on the couch, flipping through her phone like she hadn't heard the verbal grenade that had just been lobbed across our kitchen. My wife, my partner of 23 years, the woman I once built a deck for with my bare hands so she could sip wine on summer nights, didn't flinch, didn't speak, didn't even look up. She just kept scrolling like I was background noise. That silence, colder than the insult itself, cracked something in me that I didn't even know could still break. I didn't yell. I didn't slam a door. I just stood there, eyes burning, staring at both of them, my daughter who had clearly forgotten every sacrifice I ever made, and my wife who apparently decided that I wasn't worth defending anymore. Something shifted in me that night, something final. Not rage exactly, not sadness either. It was more like clarity. Like finally seeing a reflection for what it truly is after years of wiping away fog. I realized I wasn't the man of the house anymore. Hell, I wasn't even a man worth their respect. And right then, with my pride bleeding out on the cold tile floor, I made a silent promise to myself. They think I'm a loser now, but they have no idea who they just woke up. I didn't sleep that night, not because I couldn't, but because something inside me wouldn't let me. I just lay there on the living room couch, staring up at the ceiling fan slowly spinning like the gears in my head, replaying the moment over and over again until it started to feel like a nightmare someone had accidentally broadcast into my life. Around 6 a.m., with my eyes bloodshot and my chest tight from a kind of sadness I hadn't felt since my father's funeral, I decided to do what any good man, any real father, would do. I got up, made coffee, and tried to fix things. I wasn't going to let one disrespectful outburst undo the family I'd broken my back to hold together. So, I sat at the kitchen table, waiting for my wife to wake up, holding 2 mugs like a peace offering in my calloused hands. But when she walked in, robe tied loose, eyes barely open, and I gently said, "We need to talk about last night," what I got in return didn't just catch me off guard, it knocked the wind out of me entirely. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask how I was feeling. Hell, she didn't even acknowledge how deeply I'd been hurt. Instead, she leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and let out a tired sigh like I was the one making a scene. "You're blowing this out of proportion, Harold," she said, not even looking at me as she reached for her mug. "She's a teenager. They say stupid stuff. It's not the end of the world." Her tone was so casual, so dismissive, it was like being hit in the face with a pillow soaked in gasoline. I tried to explain how damaging it was, how it wasn't just about the words but the way they were delivered, like I didn't matter anymore, like I was some pathetic afterthought in my own damn house, and do you know what she said? She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Maybe if you weren't so hard on her all the time, she wouldn't lash out like that." That's when I knew, truly knew, that somewhere along the way, I'd stopped being seen as the protector, the provider, the man of this family, and had somehow become the problem instead. That conversation, if you can even call it that, was the final confirmation that I was standing alone in a place I used to call home. It wasn't just my daughter who'd lost respect for me. It was my wife, too, and the worst part? She hadn't even lost it recently. This had been eroding for a while now, like water slowly carving into stone. Little looks, little sighs, little cold shoulders. All the things you ignore when you're too busy working overtime to notice that your house is turning into a stranger's. As she walked away, muttering something about me needing to take a look in the mirror, I sat there gripping my coffee so tight, I thought the ceramic would crack. And maybe it did, or maybe it was just my illusion of this marriage shattering in my hands. Either way, I realized something vital in that moment. If I didn't start looking for the truth, no one was going to hand it to me. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. You know, the kind of overthinking that creeps in after a fight, especially when you've been sleeping on the couch and the silence in your own home starts feeling louder than any argument ever could. But then I started noticing things, small things at first, subtle shifts in the rhythm of our life that most people wouldn't clock unless they were already paying attention, which, by that point, I definitely was. My wife, the same woman who used to ask me to rub her feet after a long day and couldn't go a night without watching our favorite show together, suddenly started having headaches at bedtime, every night. She was tired, always exhausted. Except somehow that fatigue never stopped her from putting on makeup and dressing up for girls' nights that were happening with a frequency that made me wonder how many friends she actually had. She'd leave the house with that same vague smile she used to give me when we were younger, but now it wasn't meant for me, and something deep in my gut told me it hadn't been for a long time. Then there was the phone, always in her hand, face down when she wasn't using it, and never once left unattended. She'd clutch it like a lifeline, always tilting the screen just out of my view, and if I happened to walk into a room while she was texting, her thumb would swipe so fast it could have put out a cigarette. One night, I walked in as she was giggling at something on the screen, and when she saw me, she jumped like I'd caught her stealing. "Just a meme from Kara," she said, her voice a little too high, a little too forced, before quickly locking the screen and slipping the phone under a cushion like it was radioactive. And our daughter, don't even get me started. She suddenly had this new designer bag I know we didn't buy, was wearing clothes with price tags I didn't recognize from any store we ever shopped at, and she had the nerve to act like she earned it. When I asked where it all came from, she said, "Mom bought it." Like it was nothing, like we were living in some alternate universe where $1,000 wardrobes were normal for a teenager who failed algebra and skipped curfew. That's when it all started clicking together in my head. Not like a puzzle, but more like a slow avalanche, gathering speed with each passing day. I began replaying every moment from the last 6 months, every cold shoulder, every vague excuse, every time she turned away from me in bed without a word. And with each memory, the same thought grew louder in my mind, until it echoed like a church bell in an empty cathedral. She's hiding something. Whether it was another man, a secret life, or just a growing disgust for the man I'd become, I didn't know. But what I did know, with absolute certainty, was that I was no longer the man she confided in, no longer the man she came home to, and worst of all, no longer the man she respected. And when a woman stops respecting you, that's when the real betrayal begins, not with sex, but with silence. I never imagined I'd become the kind of man who'd sneak around his own house like a stranger in the walls, silently tracking the woman he once trusted with his soul. But when your instincts start screaming at you louder than your pride, you learn to stop ignoring them. I told myself I wasn't doing this out of paranoia or spite. I wasn't trying to catch her in some fantasy I'd concocted to justify the distance between us. No, this was about clarity, about peeling back the layers of deception with calm, calculated precision. So one Saturday morning, while she was in the shower humming a song I didn't recognize, maybe something he liked, I picked up her phone, tapped in the passcode she didn't know I knew, and installed a discreet tracking app that would silently feed me the answers she wasn't willing to give. I didn't stop there. That same day, I visited a little electronics store 2 towns over, the kind of place that doesn't ask questions if you pay in cash, and left with a miniature voice recorder the size of a lighter, which I carefully tucked inside her work purse later that night while pretending to fold laundry. I didn't expect fireworks. I didn't expect some explosive reveal. I was patient, disciplined, like a man laying traps in the woods, knowing that sooner or later, something would stumble into them. Every night after she went to bed, phone tucked under her pillow like a second lover, I'd sit in the garage with my laptop, reading GPS logs, listening to short snippets of audio, piecing together a puzzle that had been scattered across months of silence and strange behavior. At first, it was small stuff, a lunch that went longer than she claimed, a voicemail deleted before I could hear it, a calendar alert with no description. But it was all there, buried just deep enough to make me doubt myself if I wasn't paying attention, like someone had taken the time to cover their tracks, but not quite well enough to fool a man who's already had the rug pulled out from under him. One night, the tracker pinged her at a restaurant across town, some trendy bistro she never once mentioned to me, and when she came home, she said she'd been catching up with her friend Kara, who, according to her own Facebook, was out of state that weekend at a family wedding. That was the moment the doubt died and certainty took its place. I wasn't imagining this. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being lied to daily, blatantly, and without a trace of remorse. And as much as it crushed something inside me to admit it, there was also a strange comfort in finally knowing the truth. This wasn't just in my head. She was hiding someone, and the more I watched, the more I realized I hadn't just lost my wife's affection. I'd lost her loyalty, her honesty, her respect. And once a woman stops respecting you, it's only a matter of time before she starts replacing you. I just hadn't figured out with who yet. But I would. I damn well would. It was a Thursday night, the kind where the cold creeps in through the cracks in your windows and settles into your bones, but I didn't feel a thing, not from the weather, not from the silence in my house, and not even from the bitter taste of the whiskey I'd been nursing for the past hour. She had told me she was heading to the gym, said it in that casual, distracted tone like it was just another mundane evening, leggings, sports bra, yoga mat in hand. Except I'd already seen the notification from the tracker before she even stepped out the door. She wasn't heading toward the gym. She was heading downtown. And not to just anywhere downtown, to the kind of hotel with valet service, champagne in the lobby, and sheets so soft they probably cost more than I made in a week. I stared at that blinking red dot on the GPS map like it was a live wire, buzzing in my hand, confirming what I'd tried so hard to disprove. The gym was 30 minutes in the opposite direction, and there wasn't a dumbbell or treadmill in sight where she was going. I sat there for 10 more minutes, trying to convince myself it was a coincidence, maybe a business meeting or a girls' night that suddenly changed location, but my gut wasn't buying it, not this time. I called the hotel, used my best polite customer voice, and asked if I could confirm a reservation for someone. Said I was delivering a package, didn't want to bother the front desk unnecessarily. The name the clerk gave me hit harder than I expected. Eric Langston. Her boss. A name I'd heard over dinner more times than I could count, always coded in harmless flattery. He's brilliant but socially awkward, she used to say. You'd like him. He's just a little intense. I never liked the guy, not once, and now I had a reason deeper than any instinct or suspicion. Eric Langston, recently divorced, mid-40s, smug, ambitious, and apparently generous enough to book a suite under his own damn name while sleeping with another man's wife. My wife. That realization didn't hit me like an explosion. It was slower, colder, more surgical, like someone was cutting into me with an ice pick, and I was just awake enough to feel every inch. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat in the dark kitchen with the glow of my phone screen lighting up the face of a man I barely recognized anymore. I clicked back into the GPS app and watched that blinking dot settle into the center of the building, unmoving, unbothered. And I knew what that meant. There was no business meeting. No workout. No dinner with Kara or book club or spa night. It was all lies. Every excuse, every smile, every "I'm just tired" she'd given me for months. And now, watching that screen, I wasn't tired. I was awake, wide awake, and for the first time in a long time, I saw everything clearly. She wasn't just unfaithful. She was strategically unfaithful. And I wasn't going to sit quietly in that house another night pretending I didn't know. Because now I did. I waited until the next morning to confront her, not because I needed more time to think, but because I knew that if I spoke to her in the heat of that moment, I wouldn't be able to hold back the storm that had been brewing inside me for months. So I let the night pass, though I didn't sleep a damn second of it, and when the sun came up, I made her a cup of coffee like I used to, placed it gently on the counter, and said her name with a tone so calm it startled even me. We need to talk. She glanced at me over the rim of her mug, barely blinking, as if she'd been expecting this conversation for weeks. I told her everything, not angrily, not accusatorily, just laid it out like a man laying bricks in a foundation, the GPS logs, the phone tracker, the reservation under her boss's name at the luxury hotel where she was supposed to be working out. I expected denial, maybe even a teary apology or some twisted confession, but what I got instead was colder than ice, more hollow than the silence I'd come to know in our marriage. She laughed. She actually laughed. A short, sharp sound like a knife slicing through what little hope I had left for her honesty. You've really lost it, Harold, she said, shaking her head like I was some pitiful old man who'd gone off his meds. You're paranoid. You're insecure. This is why I don't talk to you about things, because you twist them into these insane stories. I felt the room spin. She flipped the blame so fast I almost doubted my own reality. I reminded her of the date, the time, the address, the proof, and she dismissed it all like it was coincidence, like I was the one sneaking around, not her. And just when I thought I'd already reached the peak of humiliation, our daughter walked into the kitchen, overhearing only part of the conversation, and without missing a beat, stood next to her mother and said, "Maybe if you weren't so controlling, she wouldn't need space in the first place." That sentence didn't just wound me. It unmade me. It was in that moment, standing there with a daughter who looked at me like I was the villain in a story I'd spent my life writing to protect her, and a wife who wore betrayal like perfume and still had the audacity to act like I was the problem, that I realized this wasn't just about infidelity. This was about loyalty, about the slow, silent erosion of trust, of respect, of every bond that once made this house a home. I hadn't just lost a wife. I'd lost my place in my own family, a place I built with my bare hands and a heart that bled daily for their comfort. And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't a conversation. It never had been. It was a reckoning. And it was only just beginning. The first thing I did the following Monday morning was call off work, not because I couldn't face the day, but because I knew, deep down in my gut, it was the day I would finally start reclaiming what little dignity I had left. I took a drive to a law office 2 towns over, somewhere she'd never think to look, and I sat across from a divorce attorney whose eyes sharpened the moment I slid my folder across the table. Inside it, neatly organized, was a timeline. Screenshots of GPS logs, audio clips from the recorder, copies of joint account statements, and a list of assets I'd quietly begun itemizing the night after she and our daughter made me feel like a guest in my own life. The lawyer didn't ask me if I was sure. She just nodded, flipped open her notepad, and said, "Let's do this smart." And that word, smart, echoed in my head like a promise. No more emotion. No more outbursts. I wasn't going to burn the house down. I was going to dismantle it brick by brick, quietly, while she kept sipping wine with a smug smile on her face, thinking she was winning. I opened a new bank account that afternoon, under my name only, at a credit union she didn't know I used. Then, methodically, I transferred half of our savings into it, not a penny more, not a penny less, because when this hit the courts, I didn't want to give her any leverage to claim I'd acted out of anger. This wasn't revenge. This was self-preservation. I canceled the auto pay on our joint credit card and opened one in my name. I rerouted my paycheck, my pension contributions, even my work gas stipend, slowly, carefully, so that on the surface, everything looked exactly the same. I smiled at dinner. I nodded along when she told me she had an out-of-town meeting next weekend. I told her to have fun. I even took our daughter shopping, bought her a new pair of headphones, and played the part of the dad they thought I had forgotten how to be. Let them believe they had broken me. Let them get comfortable. Because comfort is where the careless make their biggest mistakes. 2 weeks later, the divorce papers were filed quietly, without fanfare, sealed with a note to the server not to proceed until I gave the green light. I wasn't ready for the reveal just yet. No, I wanted her to keep playing her little game a while longer. I wanted her to text him from our living room while I cooked her dinner. I wanted her to keep lying to my face while I memorized the sound of her voice telling stories that would soon be used to destroy every lie she built this life on. See, this wasn't about catching her anymore. This was about control. I had taken it back, and she didn't even realize it. Not yet. But she would. Oh, she would. I orchestrated that dinner like a conductor plans his final symphony. Every note, every pause, every crashing crescendo timed with surgical precision. But instead of music, I was playing the last verse of a marriage that had already rotted from the inside out. I pitched it to her as a celebration for our daughter's early college acceptance, something wholesome, something healing after the rough patch we'd been through. She lapped it up like wine at communion, praising me for finally acting like a man again, then flitting around the house like her hands weren't already soaked in betrayal. I told her to invite her parents, her coworkers, even her boss if she wanted. I wanted everyone there. Every pillar of her little double life present and accounted for. I booked a private dining room at the nicest place in town, catered the menu to her tastes, and set up a projector under the sweet little lie that I had a nostalgic slideshow planned, old family pictures, baby videos. All that sentimental fluff she used to cry over back when her tears meant something. The night unfolded like a well-rehearsed play. Toasts were made, her father droned on about family values while she smiled like a smug debutante at a charity ball, pretending none of it applied to her. My daughter barely looked up from her phone, probably texting some boy about how lame her dad was. But I waited, patiently, until the filet mignon hit the table and the servers poured the second round of wine. Then I stood, tapped my glass, and said with a steady voice, "Before we finish dessert, I thought it might be nice to look back on the beautiful story we've all written together." She smirked, whispered something to her friend on the left, probably some sarcastic dig about how corny I was, but that smirk didn't last. The projector flickered on, casting grainy footage from the security camera in the lobby of the downtown Omni. There she was, my wife, walking in at 9:42 p.m. in that burgundy dress I thought she'd donated years ago, hand in hand with Eric Langston, her smug, recently divorced boss who was now grinning like a man who just signed the lease on someone else's house. And then came the audio, synced perfectly, mic'd from her purse the night I planted it, her voice playful, breathy, and full of venomous sweetness. "You really think he suspects anything? Please. Harold still thinks I'm going to spin class. He wouldn't know an affair if it bit him in the ass." Laughter. His and hers. The kind that curdles blood. The room froze. Her mother let out a gasp so sharp I thought she might choke. Her father just stared at his steak like it might offer a better reality. My daughter? Eyes wide, jaw slack, no TikTok comeback for this moment. And my wife? Oh, she leaned back in her chair, arms folded like a spoiled child caught red-handed, but still convinced she deserved a trophy for style. "Seriously, Harold?" She scoffed, her voice loud enough to echo. "You dragged my parents here to what, play spy games in front of a bunch of coworkers? This is pathetic. You're pathetic." That's when I stepped aside, and from the shadows near the bar, my attorney walked in, suit sharp enough to cut through her last defense. Without a word, he placed a thick manila envelope in front of her wine glass and simply said, "You've been served." The room went dead silent. She grabbed the papers like she was expecting gold, flipped through them, and then threw her napkin on the table like a petulant teenager. "Fine," she snapped. "You want out so bad? Don't come crawling back when you realize no one else wants you either." I turned, buttoned my jacket, and with a voice calm enough to make her shake, said, "I'd rather be alone in truth than loved in lies." "Enjoy your reputation, sweetheart. I didn't destroy it. You did." And I walked out. No drama. No begging. Just the heavy sound of silence behind me as her entire world, the one I built, collapsed in front of everyone she thought would never know. The fallout didn't just hit her, it flattened her. By the time I walked out of that restaurant, calm and clean, like a man who just rinsed off the last trace of poison clinging to his soul, the wreckage had already begun. Word travels fast in a small town, especially when the head of HR and 3 of your coworkers were sitting at the table watching you crash and burn on a 120-inch screen. Her phone started ringing before she even got to the parking lot. By morning, the whispers turned to full-volume scandal. Married woman caught cheating with her boss, in HD, no less. I didn't lift a finger to spread it. I didn't need to. Gossip is faster than justice, and a hell of a lot more entertaining when you've done everything legally airtight. By the end of the week, her boss, the same slick bastard she risked her family for, called an emergency meeting and threw her straight under the bus. "Violation of company policy," he said. "Compromise professional integrity." Translation? He was covering his ass, and the easiest way to do that was by firing the woman he once paid for hotel suites and flirty steak dinners. She tried to play the victim. Oh, she really leaned into it. Crocodile tears, dramatic sighs, phone calls to mutual friends with rehearsed lines like, "He blindsided me," or, "I didn't even know how unhappy he was." But the world didn't buy it. Not this time. She wasn't the woman scorned. She was the woman caught. Cold. And her reputation, once polished and pristine like her curated Instagram feed, turned into roadkill for everyone who'd ever envied her picture-perfect life. And then there was our daughter, the one who used to roll her eyes at everything I said, the one who called me a loser while her mother smirked and said nothing. She came to me that Sunday morning, eyes red, voice small. "Dad, I didn't know. I thought you were just being overdramatic. I'm so sorry." And while I could see the sincerity, the desperation in her voice as she begged me not to leave, not to tear the family apart, all I could do was nod and place a hand on her shoulder. Because the truth was, that family was already gone. It died the night her mother chose to lie with another man, and again the day she stood by while I was disrespected in my own home. What she never understood, what they never understood, was that loyalty isn't just about not cheating. It's about defending someone when they're not in the room. It's about speaking up when your daughter calls your husband a loser and you do nothing. It's about not treating your partner like an afterthought while you chase cheap thrills behind his back. And once that trust is gone, once that loyalty's been stomped out and laughed at, There's no coming back from that. So I let her cry. I let her apologize. But I didn't stay. I moved forward with the divorce like a man who'd finally torn off the last leech from his skin, and every step I took away from that house felt lighter than the one before. Because you can rebuild a life. You can't rebuild respect. And I was done begging for mine. Peace didn't come overnight. It came in slow, quiet moments, like the way morning fog lifts from a lake when there's no one around to disturb the stillness. After the divorce finalized and the papers were signed, I sold the house I once poured my soul into and walked away without a backward glance. I took my share of the assets, modest but clean, and bought a small lakeside cabin about an hour outside of town, tucked between two ridgelines where the air smells like pine and silence. It didn't have much when I moved in. Just creaky floorboards, an old stone fireplace, and enough room for one man to stretch his legs and breathe again. But it was mine, and more importantly, it was honest. I started doing handyman work for the folks in the area, fixing docks, repairing old fences, retiling floors, things that let me work with my hands and sleep with a clear conscience. No office drama, no fake smiles, just tools, wood, sweat, and the kind of solitude that heals wounds even therapy can't reach. Funny thing is, somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling angry. I stopped wondering what she was doing or who she was doing it with. I heard through the grapevine that she lost the condo not long after the scandal. Rent shot up, her savings dried out, and the friends who once clinked wine glasses with her vanished like smoke in wind. She works 2 jobs now, neither of them glamorous, front desk at a clinic during the day, retail on weekends. Eric, her knight in a tailored suit, dropped her the moment she became a liability. Coward probably couldn't face the wreckage they created together. Our daughter? She visits now and then, quiet, different, like someone who's finally seen behind the curtain. We have dinner sometimes, and though there's still a distance between us, I can tell she's trying. She told me once, with tears in her eyes, "You were always the better parent." I just didn't see it before. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Some truths speak louder when left unspoken. And as for me, well, I met someone. Not on a dating app, not in a bar, just a kind, down-to-earth woman who brought her broken mailbox to my workshop and ended up staying for coffee. She doesn't play games. She doesn't lie. She laughs at my dry humor, listens when I speak, and when she touches my hand, I don't flinch, I lean in. I don't know where it's going, but I know where I am now. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm free. I'm the man they never thought I'd be, the man who got knocked down, humiliated, spit on in his own home, and got up stronger. The truth? I didn't just survive betrayal. I outgrew it. And now, while my ex-wife scrolls through job listings in a 1-bedroom apartment with silence echoing off the walls, I wake up every morning to birdsong, fresh coffee, and the kind of peace you can't fake, rent, or steal. I lost a liar and found myself. I call that one hell of a trade.